My dog is for you, sir. Mom hasn't eaten for 2 days. The bikers found out who had taken everything from her. The row of motorcycles shattered the silence of the hot afternoon. On the shoulder of the road stood a girl, thin, with dirty hands and the gaze of an adult. In one hand she held a leash, in the other a cardboard sign. Duke. Good dog, $50 or best offer. Beside her sat a German shepherd named Duke, intelligent and hungry, but loyal. A biker, a man in a leather vest with kind eyes, stopped in front of them. The girl raised her head and said quietly, "Buy my dog, sir. Mom hasn't eaten for 2 days." The biker, known by the nickname Hawk, removed his helmet and crouched down to be at the girl's eye level. The asphalt burned his knees, but he didn't flinch. Beside him, faithful as a shadow, sat Duke, a powerful German shepherd. His coat had faded from hunger, but wary devotion shone in his eyes. The girl nervously clutched the sign as if it were the only thing keeping her from falling. "What is your name, little one?" he asked softly. "Sarah," she whispered. "Sarah Hayes. And this is Duke." "Good name," Hawk nodded. "And a good dog, why do you want to sell him?" She looked away. "Mom, she is sick, she has no medicine. We haven't eaten for 2 days." Her voice trembled, but she continued stubbornly. "I tried to sell toys, no one bought them. But Duke, he is worth a lot. He is good." Hawk felt everything tighten inside him. Behind him, motorcycles purred quietly. 3 friends waited, not interfering. In the distance under a tree, he noticed a woman, thin with her head bowed in an old men's shirt. Her chest was barely rising. Hawk stood up. "Hey, guys, call an ambulance quickly." He turned back to Sarah. "Everything will be all right, do you hear? We will help your mom." The girl looked up at him. Distrustfully, as if for the first time in a long while someone had told her the truth. Duke quietly creaked the leash, as if understanding that something important had begun. While Hawk's friends called the ambulance, he walked over to the woman sitting under the tree. Her face was pale, lips dry, eyes closed. He gently touched her wrist. A weak, ragged pulse. The woman was barely breathing. On her knees lay an old blanket, under which a thinness was visible that made the heart clench. "Mom," whispered Sarah, coming closer. "Please, wake up." Hawk turned to his group. "She is a diabetic," said the red-haired biker nicknamed Red, checking her pulse. "Critical condition. Hospital needed. Immediately." Hawk exhaled and straightened up. He had seen much: wars, death, losses. But the way a 7-year-old girl held her mother's hand, afraid that she wouldn't wake up again, hurt more than any scar. "Listen, Sarah," he said softly. "We will take Mom to the hospital, and you will ride with me. Okay?" She nodded. "Can we take Duke?" "Of course. He is your family." "Yes." She just silently hugged the dog around the neck. They moved in a column with 2 motorcycles in front, one behind, in the middle Hawk with Sarah and Duke, and on Red's bike lay the girl's mother, wrapped in a blanket. The wind hit their faces, but Hawk felt only silence, the kind that arrives before a decision that changes everything. In the hospital emergency room, medics rushed to the stretcher. Red spoke quickly, confidently. Old paramedic skills returned instantly. Sarah sat in the corner, clutching Duke to herself, while Hawk stood nearby, observing how the light from the lamps made the hospital walls too white. "Will she survive?" Sarah asked in a whisper. Hawk didn't answer right away. "We did everything we could. Now it's the doctor's turn. They will save her. They will try." He wanted to say, yes. But he couldn't. The girl had already heard too many promises behind which nothing stood. When the woman was taken to intensive care, Sarah still held the dog. A nurse tried to explain that animals weren't allowed, but Hawk looked at her in such a way that she simply nodded later. When things quieted down a bit, Sarah sat on a plastic chair. "My mom, she worked at a company. She was fired," she said quietly. They said she was too sick. Hawk clenched his fists. And your dad? He was a firefighter. He died while saving people. Sarah's voice became almost a whisper. Duke was his gift. Dad said he would protect me when he was gone. Tears finally broke through. The girl pressed against the dog, and Hawk turned away so as not to show his throat tightening. You can't save everyone, James, a therapist once told him. Maybe not everyone, but at least someone. He took out his wallet, removed everything inside, several hundred. Here, Sarah, this is for you and Mom. But I wanted to sell Duke. Dogs aren't sold, he said firmly. Keep the dog, and we will figure it out. Duke raised his head as if understanding every word. In his gaze was something human, a calm promise that he wouldn't leave her. Several hours passed. Sarah sat on the cold plastic chair, pressing Duke to herself. The dog didn't move a step away, as if sensing his little mistress was on the edge. The corridor smelled of antiseptic and anxiety. Hawk returned with coffee, though he understood the girl wouldn't drink. The doctors are doing everything they can, he said quietly. But Mom needs time. Sarah didn't answer, only ran her hand over Duke's fur. And if she doesn't wake up, she whispered. Then I will remain alone. He didn't know what to say. In his head, foreign hospitals, war, those he couldn't save floated up. You are not alone, he finally uttered. I am here and my friends too. At that moment an elderly woman approached, small with a tired face. Is that you, Sarah? She asked with a trembling voice. I am Mrs. Chen, your neighbor. I saw the video about your dog. It is already on the internet. Video. Hawk was surprised. Yes, someone filmed how you found the girl. People are collecting money. The woman sighed. Forgive me for not coming sooner. I saw everything. How their electricity was cut off, how Jenny was losing weight, I thought someone else would help. And then it became scary. Scary to see myself in them. Sarah didn't understand all their words, but in the old woman's eyes was something real. She sank down nearby, hugged the girl. Forgive me, child. I should have knocked on the door sooner. Duke pressed against them, sighing quietly. Meanwhile, Red walked up with a tablet. We found her former boss, he said to Hawk. Richard Thornton fired 12 people in one day. All single parents or those over 50, and then received a bonus for cutting costs. Hawk clenched his fists. Where is he? In his office downtown. Later, when Jenny was transferred to the intensive care unit, Hawk entered there for the first time. The woman was unconscious, but alive. Her hand, pale and fragile, lay atop the blanket. Sarah raised her eyes to Hawk. Can I go to her? Of course. The girl climbed onto the bed, hugged her mother. Duke lay at her feet, resting his muzzle on the mattress. The room became quiet. Only the sounds of machines and the dogs breathing. Hawk stood in the doorway and suddenly felt everything inside break. In his chest, the name tattooed under his skin pricked again. Ethan, his son, the one he hadn't seen for 5 years, the one his wife took to another state, deciding that a father with trauma was a threat, not family. He closed his eyes. You can't save everyone, but maybe you can save at least one little girl. Nearby stood the preacher, the oldest of the bikers, with a quiet gaze and a Bible in his hands. Sometimes, he said softly, God puts us where we need to be to remind us, humanity has not died. Hawk nodded. Tomorrow we go to this Thornton without fists, but he must hear. Sarah at that moment whispered something barely audible to her mom. Mom, I won't sell Duke anymore. He will stay with us, I promise. Hawk turned away to hide his tears. The morning began with silence. Outside the window, the ward slowly filled with pale light, and a light nudge woke Sarah. Duke quietly poked his nose into her hand. She looked at her mom. She was still sleeping, but her breathing had become more even. The girl whispered, She is breathing, Duke. She is fighting. In the corridor stood Hawk and his comrades. They were dressed in clean leather vests without insignia, as if preparing not for a fight, but for a mission. No violence, repeated Hawke. Not a single sudden movement. We are not taking revenge, we are showing the truth. The elderly Mrs. Chen put on her old coat and took her bag. I will go with you. Her voice was firm. I have been silent too long. They rode into the center of Flagstaff in a column, for bikes and one person who seemed the very shadow of her past. At the office of Grand Canyon Tours and Hospitality. The air smelled of chlorine and expensive coffee. Glass, marble, chrome. At the reception, a girl froze, seeing the leather vests. We are here to see Mr. Thornton, said Hawke. Pass on the case of Jenny Hayes. They were offered to wait for security, but someone was already filming the proceedings on a phone. Within a minute, a video appeared on social media. Bikers came to the office of the company that fired a firefighter's widow. Views grew like an avalanche. Richard Thornton met them in his office on the 20th floor. He didn't look like a winner. Tired eyes, a face that hadn't known sleep for a long time, trembling hands. What does this mean? He tried to maintain composure. Hawke placed Sarah's cardboard sign on the table. Do you see this? Duke is a good dog. $50. A 7-year-old girl held this sign because her mother, your former employee, was dying of hunger. Thornton paled. I followed procedures. It was a requirement of the board of directors. You followed protocol, Hawke repeated coldly. The very one because of which a mother didn't eat for 3 days. And a daughter tried to sell the memory of her father. Mrs. Chen stepped forward. I am their neighbor. I saw how they suffered and stayed silent. But you knew, you have power, money, connections, and all you did was sign a paper. Thornton turned to the window. His shoulders shook. I am not a monster, he exhaled. I just did as ordered. If I refused, they would have fired me. So someone had to die for you to keep your position, read throughout sharply. He didn't answer. Then Hawke stepped closer. Have you ever lost family? Yes, Thornton said with difficulty. My wife left. My son doesn't speak to me. I became what I once despised. He lowered his gaze, then opened a desk drawer and took out several bottles of pills. Here, he grinned bitterly. This is the price of my success. Insomnia, pressure, fear. Every day I think about ending it all. Silence hung in the room, only Mrs. Chen quietly wiped her eyes. Then start with atonement, said Hawke. Pay for Jenny's treatment, give her back her job. Tell everyone what you did. Thornton looked at them for a long time, then nodded. Okay, I will leave myself, resign and fix everything I can. When they walked out of the office, the news was already spreading through the city. The video of their meeting was gaining millions of views. People wrote comments, this girl must live. It's time to change something. But in the evening, when it seemed victory was close, Hawke received a call from the hospital. The doctor's voice was tense. Jenny has worsened again. Heart. Critical condition. They rushed back. The hospital corridors met them with harsh light and the sound of sirens. Sarah stood by the ward door, screaming, Mommy, Mommy, don't leave. Duke growled, not letting anyone near the girl. Doctors tried to bring the woman back to life. Hawke pressed Sarah to himself. Don't look, sweetie, don't look. It's because of me, she whispered. If I had sold Duke sooner. No, Sarah, it's not your fault. Never say that. Behind them stood Thornton. He arrived at the hospital right after in a suit that no longer mattered. He looked at all this and understood, this is his signature, his decision. His fault. I did this, he whispered. God, I did this. The monitor in the ward emitted a piercing sound, and everything around seemed to stop. A nurse shouted something to the doctor. Someone rushed to the defibrillator. Sarah screamed. Her voice broke, and she tore herself from Hawke's arms. Duke howled, rushing after her. Mommy! The girl fell onto the edge of the bed, clinging to the sheet. Please, don't leave, please. Hawk ran in after her, grabbed the girl in his arms. The doctors worked silently, focused, but he knew that look between hope and powerlessness. In a moment, the monitor beeped more evenly. The woman started breathing again. There is a pulse, shouted the nurse. Sarah, sobbing, hugged her mother, who barely opened her eyes. Her voice was weak. Almost a whisper. Sarah, sunshine, you didn't sell Duke. No, Mommy. The girl smiled through tears. He is with us. And the kind uncle helped. Jenny tried to smile. Tears glistened on her eyelashes. Thank you. Hawk stood in the doorway, feeling a lump rise in his throat. Nearby, with head bowed, stood Thornton. He wiped his eyes with his palm and came closer. Mrs. Hayes, I am guilty. I fired you. Because of me, you lost everything. Forgive me. The woman looked at him. Her eyes were tired but soft. If you came with good, then not everything is lost. Forgive yourself, I have already forgiven. These words seemed to hit Thornton like an electric shock. He sank to his knees and covered his face with his hands. I will help you, you and others. I swear. Later, when everything quieted down, Sarah and Duke slept next to the bed. Hawk sat by the window, looking at the lantern light falling on the glass. Did you do the right thing? Said the preacher, entering the ward. Maybe, for the first time in a long while. I don't know, answered Hawk. Who could do otherwise? Sometimes that is enough, said the old man quietly. Sometimes God speaks not with thunder, but with the whisper of a child asking, by my dog. Hawk looked at Sarah and Duke. A small palm lay on the dog's paw. A promise given between hearts without words. He knew, there will be hard days ahead, but today, they won. A small, but real battle. A week passed. Jenny was slowly recovering. Doctors said it was a miracle. She survived. Sarah sat by the bed every day, reading books to her mom and petting Duke, who didn't move a step away. Hawk visited them almost every evening. He brought food, medicine, helped with documents. Thornton, as promised, paid for the treatment and created a fund for families suffering from unfair dismissals. His company changed leadership, and the story of Jenny and Sarah became a symbol of change. One evening, when the sun was setting over the city, Hawk walked up to the hospital. Sarah ran out to meet him. Uncle Hawk, she shouted. Mom says we can go home now. He smiled. That is wonderful, little one. And will you come visit us? She asked seriously. Mom says we will now have a big table for friends. Hawk looked at the sky, then at the girl. I promise, I will come and bring cookies for Duke. Sarah laughed. The first time in all this while. The laugh was ringing, clear and alive. When he was leaving, the wind brought the smell of gasoline and hot asphalt. Hawk sat on his motorcycle, took a small keychain out of his pocket, an old dog tag on which the name Eaton was stamped. He squeezed it in his palm and whispered, "Thank you, son. It looks like I finally became human again." The engine roared, reflecting the sunset in the chrome. Duke yipped quietly, looking after him. Sometimes fate speaks to us not with thunder, but with a whisper. Sometimes one good deed is enough to return light to where there had long been darkness.